Hey everyone, welcome to DataMillennials. I am Atul, and in this video we are going to discuss about the Lambda function. So Lambda functions are also known as anonymous functions in Python. Lambda functions are a one-liner function defined using the Lambda keyword. Lambda function can take any number of arguments but will only have one expression. Lambda functions are used to create small throwaway functions without the need to formally define the function using the def keyword. Now the question that should come to your mind is that when we can use this Lambda function. So whenever you have to use a function for a very short term or for a temporary basis, then you can use this Lambda function. Or the second use of Lambda function is that when a function is required as an argument to a higher order function like map, filter or sorted, then you can use this inline function, which is nothing but Lambda function. Then the last reason for using Lambda function is that these Lambda function are a small function that can be defined in a single line, and this Lambda function makes the code more concise. So instead of writing a long function for a temporary basis, it's always better to write a Lambda function because we know that the function that we are writing is for a very short term use and it's temporary. That's why we use the Lambda function. So let's take a very basic example of Lambda function. Let's assume that you have to define a function to add 10 to a number. Okay, in that case, instead of defining a function using the def keyword, taking the argument and doing all of those things, instead of that we can simply write a Lambda function in a single line. So let's say that I use a add 10 variable in which I'm going to use the Lambda function. With this Lambda function I'm going to give the argument x plus 10, and then I'm going to save the result into this result variable, okay, using this add 10 function, and I'm going to give the value, let's say 50. So I want to add 10 in this value 50. Okay, so let me print this result variable. Okay, if I run this, you can see that we are getting 60 as output. Okay, so let's get into the explanation or the line by line understanding of the code. Okay, so we are defining a Lambda function that takes one argument, which is x over here, and we are returning x plus 10. The Lambda function is assigned to the variable add 10 over here. Then we are calling this add 10 function with the argument 50 and assign the result into this result variable, and then we are printing this result variable to get our output, which is 60. Okay, now let's talk about another example of Lambda function with multiple argument. So over here in this example we took only one argument, which is x, and added with 10, right? Let's say that we have to multiply two numbers. Okay, in that case we have to take more than one argument. Okay, so let me define a new variable multiple equal to, I'm just going to use the Lambda keyword, and then I'm going to say x comma y, x into y, and then I'm going to save it into a result variable saying that result equal to multiply, and I'm going to add 3 comma 4, and then I'm going to print this result. Okay, so let me run this first and then we'll go line by line to understand this Lambda function program. Okay, so we are getting the result 12, which is expected. If we multiply 3 and 4, we'll always get 12, right? So what we have done over here, we have defined the Lambda function with two argument x and y, and we are returning their product x into y into this multiple. So the Lambda function assigned the value of x into y into this multiple. Then we have this result equal to multiple 3 comma 4. So we are basically calling the multiply function with argument 3 and 4 and assign the result to the variable result over here, and then we are printing this result. Let's talk about the another example of Lambda function with map function. So let's say I have a list of numbers, and in this list I'm gonna put 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, what if I have to get the square of each of these numbers? Then what I can do is that I can use the lambda function. So let me declare a new variable, squared numbers. In this, I'm basically declaring a new list. Okay, it's not a variable, it's a list in which I'm going to save the square for each of these numbers. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to call a lambda function saying that lambda take x, then get the square of this number. Okay, and I'm going to give the argument numbers. So I am basically giving the argument number, which is nothing but the list. Now with list I have to use the map function over here. Okay, and then after this mapping I have to convert it into a list basically. Okay, now if I print this squared number, you can see that we have a square for each and every number, right? Now let's go line by line. So we have defined a list of number and assign it to variable numbers. Okay, then we are using the map function over here to apply this lambda function, where the lambda has a square of number to each element present in the list, and the lambda function returns the x, which is nothing but a square of each and every element. Then we are converting it into list using this list function and assigning it into this squared number list. So this list function helps us to convert the result of map to a list and assign it to the squared numbers. Then we are printing this squared numbers over here. Now let's talk about the last example that we are working in this video, is that the lambda function with the filter function. Okay, assume that you have a list of numbers. Let's take this numbers only. Okay, this list, and put it over here. Instead of the number from 1 to 5, let me add a couple of more numbers over here. Okay, now let's say that I want to get the even number from this entire list. In order to get the even number, we have to basically divide the number or each element of this numbers by 2 and see whether there is any remainder or not. If remainder is 0, then it's an even number, right? So what we can do is that we can simply say even number. We are going to create an even number list in which I am going to apply the lambda function, saying that lambda take one element and divide that element with 2, and if the remainder is 0, then move it back or return it. But how this x will be assigned? This x will be assigned based on the numbers that we are giving over here, or the list that we are giving over here, because we have the list of numbers, right? Now in order to implement this, we have to use the map function. So this map function will help us to get the even number from this entire list. For like we will be checking for each number whether it's even or not, and then we have the output, right? But what we needed to do was that we needed to filter out the even number. So instead of this map, I'm going to use the filter function. If the remainder is 0, then filter that element and put it into my even number list. Before putting it into even number list, we have to convert the output of this line into a list. So we'll put the list function over here, and then we'll print this even numbers. So if I run this, you can see that we're getting 2 4 6 8 and 10, right? So what we have done over here is that we have defined a list of number and assigned it to the variable numbers. Then we are using this filter function to apply the lambda function, which is this over here, for each element in the number list. And this lambda function basically takes one argument, which is this x, and returns true if x is even, and it returns false otherwise, or it will return false when it's not an even. And then we have this list function, which convert the result of this filter function into a list and assign it to the even number list, and then we are printing this even number. So these example that I have given you from example 1 till example 4 demonstrates how lambda function can be used in Python for a variety of purpose, including simple operation or working with multiple argument and integrating with the functions like map and filter. So lambda function provides a quick and concise way to create simple function for immediate use, and it helps us to enhance our code readability and efficiency in appropriate situations. Happy learning and see you in the next video.